What's up, guys? This is Miasin, and every single format, I just love being able to make these videos, man, for a bunch of reasons. First of all, it's fun. Second, requires like literally zero effort from my end, so obviously I'm always a winner. And also because you guys get to learn a little bit on how to utilize the best hand traps in the current format, and I've got a lot of them. I don't like only showing 15 hand traps. No. I'm not racist. I don't like to discriminate towards the garbage hand traps. So even the dog shit ones are still going to be featured in this video. But yeah, before we go any further, you already know the drill. As always, friendly reminder, of course, to smash the like and subscribe button, watch until the end. And most importantly, here is my beautiful promo on the Crystron spreadsheet. I really do recommend looking into it. So just in case you didn't know much before, the spreadsheet has absolutely all the info you need if you are planning on building the Crystron deck, which is the best deck that is coming out of Supreme Darkness. My spreadsheet features visual support, which includes images and videos while being easy to understand, regardless of whether or not you had prior experience with the deck. It comes with 50 combos that show the most optimal lines when you are interrupted, but also through hand traps such as Ash, Imperm, every Molchemy monster, Dimension Shifter, as well as Artifact Lancia. Best part is, every combo comes with their own notes so that you can understand what's going on. This spreadsheet also comes with a YCS ready decklist containing my in-depth reasoning on every card and ratio so that you don't get confused and know exactly what to buy. And if you ever encountered issues with sighting patterns, I got you, because I also cover going first and going second sighting patterns against 15 decks of the metagame. This spreadsheet also covers some alternative techs and engines that could be worth exploring the deck, as well as their pros and cons. Having access to the spreadsheet also grants you access to an ever-growing Discord community of like-minded Crystron players, and also access to me, where I can answer specific questions and share updates with you. Speaking of updates, I'm even willing to add additional sections and combos to the spreadsheet if I'm asked to, and you won't have to pay again to benefit off of these updates. I'll be fully honest with you, if you're interested in Crystron, the spreadsheet will not only save you hundreds of hours of theory and practice, but also a lot of money. You won't have to make unnecessary purchases since you'll already have access to an optimal deck list, and you're not gonna have to spend your days and nights coming up with combos. Also, every time you forget about a combo, you can just go back to the spreadsheet and check it out to refresh your memory. If you're interested in the spreadsheet, all you have to do is PayPal me $20 US, and make sure to state your Gmail account in the transfer so that I know who to share the spreadsheet with. If you forgot to state your Gmail in the transfer, don't worry, just email me a proof of payment with your Gmail, and I'll share the spreadsheet with you as soon as I can. Unless I'm sleeping, I should never take too long to grant you access to the spreadsheet, so don't worry about the delay. The specs of the spreadsheet alongside all the steps to buy it are at the top of the description, so please check it out as soon as you can. Anyways, with that said, let's get on with the video. Okay, absolutely beautiful. Anyways, the first one is Rainbow, Curry Photon, whatever. If this is Curry Photon, then don't play it, and if this is Rainbow Karibo, don't play it. Oh, actually, it's Rainbow Karibo. Yeah, no. Okay, Alive Justice Cycle Reader. This is the definition of a very niche hand trap, but it's not bad. So the thing about Alive Justice Cycle Reader is that it's usually worse than Bestials just because, it only covers light monsters and it also doesn't really summon itself, but sometimes you can argue that Alive Justice Cycle Reader can be better than Bestials because it doesn't summon itself. So if you're playing things like the Kishtiras, for example, this could make a lot of sense in your deck. However, it's only really good against like Fiendsmith-based strategies, Drytron, and stuff like that, so I don't really think it's worth it. I'm honestly not a really big fan of this card, but that doesn't mean that it's bad, because, again, it's a level 3 tuner monster that could, I don't know, add some relevance in your deck. Also, if you can search this with the Gear, Gig, and X, not that it really matters, but if ABC ever comes back into the format, which will be the case in Maze of the Master, I think, this card could become better. Okay, so this is Ash, obviously a card that you got a main deck because it is by far the best hand trap. I mean, it's the most generic. It's not necessarily the best in terms of power level, but in terms of applications, in terms of diversity, it is your best friend. This card has almost no bad matchup. Obviously, it's not great against the combo decks. I'm just a big fan of Ash overall. It's also a card that you can use defensively, so when your opponent is using Molchemies against you, you can just Ash that. So it has a lot of flexibility, and sometimes you can even draw it for a turn as your 6th card, and it's not gonna piss you off too much. Okay, Typhoon is not like the best. It has like some applications, like for example against the White Force deck. If your opponent activates like Hallowed Azamina and then chains the Wanted, you can chain Typhoon because now your opponent has 2 spells, and then you destroy the Wanted, and then there's no more Sinful Spoils card for your opponent to send, so the Hallowed just does not trigger. But it's honestly not too great. This card was better before when it was, the Fire King format, so people were sacking their Fire King Sanctuary with the Snake Eyes, so all they had was like Fire King Island, and then you could destroy the island. Or when they had like Divine Temple and IP, you could go Typhoon, destroy the IP, destroy the Divine Temple, so that even if your opponent had Appaloosa, it was still resolving. Now, this card doesn't really have any applications. So it's honestly not too great, but it's not like complete garbage. Because this card surely is Miradora, the Heavenly Zephyr. This card is so bad. As a matter of fact, this card is so ass that it's not even in like any YouTuber's like tier list video. It really is that garbage, but again, I don't like to discriminate because I'm a nice guy. So that's the reason why this card is still going to be featured in my video. All of that just to put it in the... Ew, my eyes! Yes, okay. Anyways, Imperm, obviously, this card is always going to be right after Ash, at least not too far away. Not too far away from it, because it is very flexible. I mean, it is actually more flexible than Ash in the sense where you can draw this for turn and it's great. It doesn't lose the Call by the Grave, doesn't lose the talent. That's fantastic. Very flexible. It is infinitely better than Veiler. It's not even remotely close to being comparable. Retelling Sea is another niche card. This card could easily just come back to being good. It depends on how much Memento gains in popularity, but the reason why this card was better before was because the Snake Eye deck was still a thing. People are still playing Snake Eye. Nobody's really on Snake Eye, so there's no like real normal spell, whatever, that really special, and it's not just normal spell, but spell card in general that really special summons a monster, other than, you know, Memento with their Memento Fusion. That's like one of the only real decks that I can really think about. Okay, Ghost Mourner and Moonlit Chill. I'm actually not a big fan of this card. I kind of want to put it in the worst section, honestly, just because this card, it's not even that it's niche, it's just that even if you can play a lot of hand traps, there's usually better options. This card, you can play it as a 1-of, maybe, but if you start playing this card as a 3-of, you will have issues, because this card is not flexible at all. It's garbage in the TCG, whereas in the OCG, it's actually not too bad. You know, your opponent summons a monster, and then you can use the Mourner at any moment because it kind of behaves like a quick effect. But in the TCG, it behaves like a trigger effect. So you are turn player, you gotta use your Mourner in Chainlink 1, and then your opponent's monster that was summoned on your turn triggers in Chainlink 2, so it really defeats the purpose of playing this card. So it always acts as a worse Veiler and Imperm. And if you're playing Veiler in your deck, that means that by default, you're playing a minimum of 12 cards, because Veiler is strictly worse than Ash, Imperm, and Furos. You're really just playing 15 hand traps at the very least with Mourner, and even then, I still think it's incorrect because there's better cards than this. So there is almost no argument to even look at this card. It really is utter garbage, but to be completely fair and consistent, I'm gonna have to downgrade the Typhoon as well, just because I couldn't really imagine a world where you're gonna be playing either of these cards, you know, unironically. DD Crow is really bad, honestly, like really garbage, because I also can't really think of a world in which this card is ever going to be better than either Alive Justice Cycle Reader or Bestials. This card just fully gets power crept by both of these cards. Unless you're really trying to target like spells and traps, which it's not the format for that. It's just not the correct timing. Nibiru is a card that either has to be in your main deck or in your side deck, I think. If you're main decking it, then yet again, you gotta play a lot of hand traps because this card is incredibly weak on its own. It pretty much does nothing at all. Ghost Sister is utter garbage as well. I really hate it. My issue with Ghost Sister is that if you are trying to take advantage of the time mechanic, which by the way, don't do that, that's really stupid, you are not giving yourself the best chances because you only have like a 33% chance of drawing this card, and then your opponent technically has like a 90% chance, whatever, to, you know, get access to like an in-engine way of burning you, like Gaga Cowboy, for example. Very easy to achieve. You're really just nullifying the skill aspect of the game, and also you're taking away 3 slots in your side deck for something that you really shouldn't put yourself in that position to begin with. So I think Ghost Sister as a time card is bad because you shouldn't get into time. You should play fast. You should understand your own deck, otherwise there's issues with the way you're playing. But also, another problem with Ghost Sister is that as a real card, it doesn't really feel like it does anything. Like, Raziel can just go Detonator Pass and not even give you like that much life points. Okay, Bestials are a fantastic card. Again, they're cards that you have to, at the very least, have to side deck, but you can easily main deck them as well. That's absolutely respectable. And yeah, I got really nothing against the Bestials overall. I just think they're great cards. Cyframe Gamma, very niche. Other than Primite Fiendsmith, I can't really think of a deck that really wants to play the Gamma package, just because in that deck, you actually have to play Driver. Otherwise, you know, you're another barrel. Sometimes they can't even use its effective Foolish, which means that your Roar is gonna be dead, and that's really not something that you want. So you need more than one normal monster, so it's White Dustin and the Driver. I will be, by the way, making a video on Primite Fiendsmith very soon, so stay tuned. Gamma actually makes sense in that deck, so if you're just trying to do the one Gamma and one Driver in like some other decks, I honestly really don't recommend. Okay, Flying Sea, this card is like extreme trash. Like, it literally just doesn't hurt Raziel at all. It almost helps them out because now everybody's on Raziel Fiendsmith and Raziel Mitsurugi. Okay, Mochimi Furos, I don't really know what would be the optimal order here. Some people argue that Furos is better than these two cards, and some people say that it's worse. If you main deck it, then you can draw it going first, in which case it would be worse than these cards. But if you draw this going second, it is actually better than any of these cards. So just because of that, I'm gonna have to put it in the middle. I think this is the best compromise. I think Furos is a great card going second, obviously. It's gonna be one of your best friends against almost every deck that I can think of. Not a lot of decks have, you know, an easy matchup against this card. It really is that good. The decks that don't lose to this, usually their ceiling level is a little worse, so that actually plays in your favor if anything. Artifact Lancia, if you're not main decking this card, you're almost trying to lose on purpose. Literally no excuse. This card has to be in your side deck, like clearly, but if you, it also shouldn't be in your main deck. That would make no sense. Whereas on the other hand, the Bestials and Nibiru, they can be in your main deck, but if you don't want to main deck these cards, 100% A-okay, that's fine. Dominus Impulse, okay, if you can main deck Dominus Impulse, I still wouldn't necessarily do it, just because in the Malice deck, for example, it has a lot of dead matchups. Like against Raziel, this card doesn't really negate too many things. Like your opponent can still get the Detonator, and that's really bad for you. So I don't really like it too much, but you can at the very least side it. And actually, if you can side it, I do think it's good, because in the Malice Mirror match, this card is great. It can stop the GWC, and obviously it can stop the effects of the Malice and the Banish. So it just acts as a much better Ghost Spell, but then again, it's only really good against Malice in that situation. But it also overlaps for a lot of other decks, and it's also great against rogue decks. It's just that it's not good against Raziel, which is the #1 deck that you have to be preparing yourself against this format. Okay, this is the other sea monster, so obviously it's slightly better than Flying Sea, but that doesn't make it good. No material, yeah, no. Okay, Ghost Ogre. This one is just not great, but it's not garbage. It's clearly better than Mourner, just because it has more coverage. Like, it technically can still be used against Malice, even though it's not great, because if they have, like, a Sky Striker card or a Bestial, it's basically going to be doing absolutely less than nothing, because they get to skip the step where they go into the Haggard Lizardos, and then there's nothing to Ogre anymore after that. It's really just completely dead. But it's also not too bad against Abaaku. You can technically use this as a board breaker, so it's kind of like a Solemn Strike from the hand against Abaaku. Like, they get to negate, and then since they... Oh, sorry, you get to negate their effect, and then you obviously destroy the Abaaku, and it doesn't come back during the end phase, and it doesn't resolve, so that's kind of nice. Ghost Reaper and Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries. This is very niche, not super great. I think it's slightly better than what people give it credit for. You gotta use this card at a really weird timing. Like, for example, against Raziel Fiendsmith, you wait until they summon Excite on Night, and then you Reaper the Requiem, and that's not too bad, because now you made them commit to, like, Excite on Night, which is not a great play. And then they also don't have access to their Fiendsmith package, so that really worsens their hand in case they had, you know, Fiendsmith tracked in the hand. Now, it really does nothing. They search Lurie, and then they make, what, like a sequence that does nothing? But if they had Engraver, then they could still make DSA, so that's a little problematic. And then they still make, whatever, like a Detonator or something. But yeah, this card can be good against Raziel Fiendsmith. It's very weak against Raziel Mitsurugi, but it's overall just a good card against the Fiendsmith-based strategies. So I don't think it's a bad card at all, honestly. I think if anything, it's probably a little better than Alav Justice Cycle Reader, just because it targets Fiendsmith-based strategies better than this. And I'm gonna have to downgrade this card all the way down to here. Skullmeister, it's probably the best card in the section. It's not a great card, but it's not a garbage card either. I'm just not a really big fan of it at the current moment. I think where this card shined the brightest was in Unchained format, where it kind of behaved like another Ashe against them, and it wasn't once per turn. So you could almost argue that to some degree, it was actually better than Ashe, because I remember Ashe against Unchained was one of the only handshaps that really felt like it did something. Like, Droll was useless, Ogre was obviously useless, Phantasme, very interesting card. Again, another card that is very niche. If you can play it, then whatever, it's fine, but you're not necessarily forced to play it. If for Phantasme to make sense in your deck, you gotta deck build your deck around it. It's really awkward, but if you play Phantasme with a lot of baby handshaps like Veiler, Ogre, Mourner, Ashe, Imperm, it might not be the best. I think the best way I've ever seen Phantasme being played was with a very fat Bestial package and the Chummies. You can almost argue that your handshaps behave more like board breakers at this point, and you can actually afford to drop Phantasme very late in the combo to draw as many cards as possible. But if you gotta resolve this card super early to draw into like baby handshaps, it's not worth it. So again, it's a very niche handshap. It's more niche than people think. Just because you can't play it doesn't mean that you should. And I don't really think it's a card that you can just blindly, you know, play in your deck and just say, oh, you know what, against that deck, it always links summon, so it's good. And against Raziel Fiendsmith, sometimes they don't even link summon. I've actually seen a match, and I've actually semi-played in a match where we got ashed on like one of our, I think it was like Razor Detonator, sorry, Duo Drive. And then we went Talent, look at the opponent's hand. There was a Phantasme and like something else. Oh no, sorry, we got Furos, and then we ashed the Furos. And then we talented, by the way, I say we because we played as a team, Team Inspire against Team Onax. And then we went Talent, look at the opponent's hand, Phantasme, Ash, Bonfire, and X-Raziel. We removed the Ash, and then we just didn't link summon at all, and this card was useless. So honestly, I think this is usually, it can be a better hand trap instead. Ghost Bell, I don't like this card at all, but I'm still gonna put it into this section because it's still a niche card. I don't think it's a great card. I don't think it's a card that you gotta side. I think there's a lot of propaganda around this card. People are saying that it's broken, that it's good against Malice. I disagree. Because against the GWC, even though, yeah, sure, you can negate it, they can still go Abaaku, revive back the White Binder, and then the White Binder effect. And it's back to square one. It really changed nothing. Or they can go Bestial, banish the White Binder, and then effect. But my main issue with Ghost Bell is that it's a hand trap that you're trying to use as a board breaker. So it makes no sense. You actually get punished if you draw this card in your opening 5. You almost want to draw it as your 6th card. There's infinitely more cards that are good against Malice rather than this. Like, this really just sucks overall. It's not good against the Raziel deck at all, or at least the Raziel engine. It's not good against Fiendsmith. I really hard disagree. If you Ghost Bell like the Engraver Graveyard effect, while they have Necroquip, you just give them a draw 1 for free, even if they didn't have like the Engraver in hand. That's really bad. Honestly, this card, it gets like too much praise, but I really disagree with it. Okay, Delta is like strictly worse than Gamma, obviously, but there are still applications for this card. Like, it doesn't suck. And again, the Primite Fiendsmith deck can technically get away with it. Like, if you want to play like 1 Gamma, 1 or 2 Deltas with the driver, you can do that, but I'm not a big fan, honestly. Just because the hand traps are different, and there's also like a Summon Skull in your deck, which, well. Okay, Molchemy Perillia, it's not a card that you gotta necessarily side, so I'm gonna have to put it there. But it's probably one of the best cards. It actually is by far the best card in this section. But this section, the cards aren't like terrible. It's just that I think you can be doing better. That's all that it really means. But yeah, the Perillia I think is actually the worst out of the 3 Molchemies at the current moment. Because I think that Molchemy Nialis, it completely outshined it. I think this is the 2nd best anti-Malice card out there after Artifact Lancia. I actually think that Nialis is better than Furos against Malice, because you get your draws earlier, and also you're chaining this to the effect of a Malice. It's not like Furos where you gotta shotgun it, you know, hope maybe they're not gonna summon from the extra deck, maybe they will. Nialis, there's no mind game, it's really just you're always guaranteeing your draws, which I like a lot. I just think this is an incredible card for sure. Dimension Shifter, okay, if you can main deck this card, I honestly would still main deck it. Even if it has a lot of dead matchups, still, you know, people are playing Raziel Fiendsmith, and you're at least shutting down the Fiendsmith cards, and also you can be smart with this card and not use it on standby. So you wait until your opponent summons Exciton Knight, and then you drop the Shifter, because usually Dimension Shifter, it's not the kind of card that is optimal to be used on the draw phase. Yeah, sure, you play into Talent, but it is what it is. Almost every hand trap out there loses to Talent anyways. Droll and Lockbird is very interesting. I think it's probably going to be at the very bottom of must side, just because this card, it really does depend. Like, if you're playing this card, are you playing the Molchemies or not? Because if you're playing a bunch of the Chummies, like if you're playing all 9, and you're playing Droll, I think that's overkill. I think that's a little too much. Because it conflicts too much, but if you don't play like too many of these cards, Droll is probably one of your best friends this format, because it's quite good against Raziel Mitsurugi. It is very bad against Malice. It's good against a bunch of rogue decks. It's not great against Raziel Fiendsmith, just because the Fiendsmith engine is very good at still making, you know, a Caesar and the Paradise Interruption with the DSC array through a Droll. Obviously, the Droll is not going to change anything. It's just going to punish them, like punish their extenders, but that's it. I just don't think that this card does enough on its own consistently. Otherwise, it would have been in this section. Effect Veiler. You know what? This is not a card that you gotta main deck if you can, just because unless you're playing a bunch of hand traps, it's not even that good. I'm actually gonna have to put it there right after Perillia, because it's to be fair, it's not a niche card. It's just that it's not great. It's way worse than Imperm. Usually, every single tier list people will always place Veiler right after Imperm, but I disagree. I think that you can afford to just not play Veiler at all in your deck list, and you should be fine. Dominus Purge, I think this is a card that you gotta main deck if you can, just because it's another way to stop the Duo Drive, and it's also more flexible, safer to use than Veiler. This is just a great card, and also it stops a lot of things. It can stop like triple tactic talent to draw, it can search triple tactic thrust to set, it can stop a bunch of things. This card is honestly very nice. Also, you can stop like the Molchemies if this card was face down, so yeah, that's cool. And finally, Chaos Hunter is a card that you're not necessarily forced to side, but if you don't have access to Nialis, this is your cheap alternative. And also Droll is the budget alternative to the Molchimi monsters overall, just because it conflicts with it anyways. So, well, conflicts with them. That's just my 2 cents on these 2 cards. But yeah, you guys let me know how you feel about this handshop tier list in the comment section below. For the most part, I think I'm very satisfied with this positioning. But again, if you got any complaints or anything, you feel free to reach out to my manager. And again, I don't have a manager, so what this means is like and subscribe.